it seems like every time that we talk, I'm trying to coax you into buying more technology to upgrade. I mean, you got the new microphone about it.
The mic is great, right? Sound is good.
Right. So you're happy with that. You were using like a plug-in microphone. I mean, you sound awesome on the podcast.
No, I had a crappy microphone because my old one broke, and then a friend of mine gave me a crappy one. But the old one is the one I use in the summer because it's easier to travel with. And actually, that one's good. And it's just the lighting, which isn't good, but that's only because I've got this like old camera from this camera's probably I want to say it's 15 years old, just hooked up to my desktop. So I'm not using a laptop. I've got like an external camera plugged in, and it is what it is. I mean,
well, I'll send
people are there to hear me, not see me for the most part. I mean, I'm just, we're just talking football. It's not like we're doing anything in the background. Plus you can see my balcony behind me.
Yeah, no. I mean, sometimes when the sun hits in a certain direction, it gets a little crazy. But listen, we'll talk it through. I think that to take Real Man Sports and the Chris Liss podcast, I think that you see all these like athlete podcasts, right? When you're going through social media, I know you don't go through too much, but that's what gets people's the attention on the podcast are these video clips. So we'll get into it. I just think that there's a lot of upside for the content you're doing and you don't want to be on social media. So the other thing you have to do is video and all this other stuff.
I want downside. That's why I do this. That's the difference. One time, do you remember, you're probably old enough. Do you remember when back in the day, you'd have AT&T as your landline, and then MCI would call you out of the blue and say, hey, listen, we'll give you a better deal. And then you'd switch because it was cheaper. And then AT&T would call you 3 months later and you switch back, and they kept doing it. And I got sick of it, right? Because it was just annoying. So I just decided to have some fun with it. And MCI called me and they said, you want to switch? We have a better deal. I said, no, I want a worse deal. And she was like, no, but our deal is better. I said, I know your deal is better, but I want you to tell me why your deal is worse, and then I'll switch. Why it's worse, why it's a stupid decision for me to go with you. And she couldn't do it because she was on the script. Right. She just couldn't take it. And I derived some perverse satisfaction out of that. But that's what I want. I want a worse setup. I want it to look worse. I want to have downside. So help me out.
Funny enough, when you get all these calls about people trying to either buy your house or they're trying to some crazy thing where they're investment thing, and it's BS. Once in a while I'm in the mood and I screw with them. I pretend I can't hear them. I tell them I start going, hello, crazy voices and stuff. I said, oh, this is a good deal for me. I start doing my bad Jerky Boys impression.
Dude, I have this idea where you get a fake online identity, you have a credit card attached, whatever, and you basically every scam, every phone call, you get you get a phone line dedicated to it. You go through it all the way. You're like, hello, absolutely, I want that warranty, but you never pay anything, and you just dedicate yourself to making all of those the lives of all those people so miserable that basically it just it's so annoying. They never know that they're getting one of these people that's just going to waste their time endlessly. Imagine if 100 people did that. But, most people just hang up or ignore 99.9% or all of them. But if you had 100 people taking on every single one, I think it would be over because they would just be like, we can't take it anymore. There's these psychos who just mess with us too much. I know. I'm almost want to do that.
Yeah, well, so not only that's a thing that people do now, right? And there's whole TikTok accounts dedicated to it's called scamming the scammers.
Oh, so they are doing that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, no, they're doing it. And then they film themselves and then they kind of look at the camera going, look at that. This asshole. So no, there's a guy. I mean, I know you don't like to scroll on spy apps, but there's some great accounts that do that. By the way, so Survivor week 11. Are you still in any of your pools?
Yeah, I was going to take Seattle, but like a donkey, I switched to the Bengals at the last second. And I wrote about it. I'm not that mad. I mean, Seattle won on the last second field goal. The Bengals lost on the last second field goal. Funny story that Sasha came home from whatever she was doing, and Burrow throws that second pick in the red zone, down 10 with 5 minutes left. And I'm like, God damn it. I slammed my laptop shut. And Sasha's like, calm down. You're a crazy person. I said, I'm just knocked out of Survivor. That's it. So I grab Oscar, who was overdue for a walk, take him out for 10 minutes, come back up. And it's all of a sudden 27-24. And the Bengals have the ball in the 10-yard line. I'm like, holy shit, what happened? And then he throws the ball to Tyler Boyd, drops it in the end zone, get the field goal to tie. I lose anyway, right? But it just felt like such a reprieve, such a miracle that I was not as mad. And B, I pick Burrow over Geno Smith. It wasn't a crazy thing to pick. I was a little more scared of the Texans than I was of the football team. But, I likened it you're going to die, right? In Survivor, probably. You could win, but you're most likely going to die. You're going to die in real life. But you don't want to die in real life being like, hey, I'm wasted. Let's jump off the roof into the swimming pool. You know, if a meteor hits the earth and you die, you're like, okay, I'm okay with that. The meteor hit the earth. We all died. I died. Fine. But if I was drunk and I jumped off the roof into the swimming pool and I hit my head on the side, you know, that's a stupid way to die. And so I feel like even though I died, it wasn't like a stupid way to die. It was like, I'm fortunate that I died, but I don't feel as bad about it. Does it make any sense?
Yeah. Oh, no, 100%. There's again, I hate to keep referencing TikTok culture, but there's a account and you're bringing up things. See, this is what I'm saying. You're in line with pop culture stuff. It's called Dumb Ways to Die.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I'm totally on board with that. And, you know, I made a meme. Like, you know, that Robert, you know, that the movie Raging Bull or Robert De Niro is like, you never got me down, Ray. He's like all bloodied and bruised, and
never
Ray,
knocked him down. Yeah.
Ray Robinson's like celebrating the win. He like dominated the fight, but he goes over like totally beat up. He's like, "You never got me down, Ray. You never got me down." And I do things like, "I never sold a sat, Ray. I never sold a sat." You know, just all these things.
Do people get it? Because it's
I mean, it's you know, I never. Well, yeah, people on Nostr get it, but. Right. The point is that I get it. I'm like I would be a meme maker, you know, if I was into that. I would. That's that's the way I think, you know.
Yep. No, totally. Yeah. No, meme culture, meme comedy. I think when it's done right is brilliant. You know, I mean, that's, you know, it used to be.
Well, it's powerful. It's powerful too.
Right. It's almost like the modern day political satire cartoons they used to do in newspapers. Right. Would you kind of compare it to that?
Yeah, I think even more. I mean, it's just powerful because like you see it, it's funny, it hits. And it actually like makes its point in a way that an argument can't quite. I mean, an argument, if you're really paying close attention, can make a strong point. But if you only have a quick attention, it's like, boom, I just delivered a lot of information and a message to you in 1 second. You know, I think they're powerful.
All right. So also, I'm wondering, like, as far as, you know, I have to keep in mind like SEO and like titling and thumbnails and stuff for YouTube. I wonder if enough people are now this is the dilemma I was having this week. Like enough people are disinterested in Survivor, where we talk about, you know, 10-15% Survivor here. We do 85% fantasy football and other things. But I still have been titling this podcast Survivor. I know you call it Surviving Week, whatever. I wonder if that title, I struggle. Is that obsolete now? Or...
It's obsolete. I mean, the only thing it does is a signal to the people who've been following along. We're still alive. We still care. Oh, here it is. Right. If you call it like talking shit with Chris Liss,
I was going to call it like week 11 sleepers to start. Like that. I was using that in my mind.
But even that is not what it is. But the point is like, I mean, if you want SEO, you know, it'd be like the Epstein client list. Call it that. You know, then you get the SEO, and then we'll just do the regular thing, right? They have the Epstein client list, right? I mean, if you're like it's sleepers to start, that's not what we're talking about. So you may as well go Epstein client list. Although I'm not sure it fits into the RotoWire offerings. Just one note for everybody: I'm on day 4 of a 4-day fast. I haven't eaten since Sunday night. It's now 2:30 in the afternoon, Lisbon time. So I'm gonna eat tonight. But I'm, you know, if I'm tripping, then I'm, you know, then you know why.
Wow, 4 days, man. Yeah. I give you a lot of credit there. That's difficult. That's how do
you know, yesterday was really hard. Today is actually really easy. I feel like $1 million. I'm almost like I should keep this going. If I didn't have a dinner with Heather and some other friends tomorrow night, and I got to eat something, you can't just go cold to like a restaurant. I'm gonna keep it going because I feel great today. A little tired, but great. Like really clear-headed, really calm. Yeah. Yesterday I was like fighting it a bit, but today I feel good.
Yeah, no, it's I don't feel clear-headed. You know, the once in a while I take those CBD gummies. It's very rare, right? But last night I referee high school basketball. I had a game, and then I did the Sirius XM show for RotoWire. So I was like adrenaline. I couldn't go to sleep. I was like, I'll do it. And then the next day I feel like it's almost like, I guess, hungover would be the right word.
Yeah, you get groggy from CBD. I think there's I get that too. Like
I'm out on that.
Real Man never does only CBD. What is it?
CBD.
It's just THC only for the Real Man. But you know, the THC and then go ref the game. You know, you see how that goes.
Oh, right. Really. Man. It's high school. We don't want to deviate too much, but high school basketball season's back. Arguing with coaches. It's a whole thing. All right. So this week in the pools that you're still in, let's go down. Washington seems to be the most rostered team in Survivor this week. Go through the percentages.
Yeah, Washington is the highest because obviously 2 reasons. One is they mostly use the other teams, and 2, because nobody wants to save them for anything. And the Danny DeVito Giants are the nut low. They're the 32nd best team in the league. I don't think it's close. The Raiders blew them out. I mean, they barely lost to the Jets, but that was with was that with Danny DeVito? I can't remember, but it was Danny DeVito. But the Jets, are in the bottom 5.
By the way, DeVito good for fantasy, by the way. He saved my ass last week.
Well, because didn't he run into touchdown? And
whatever it is, 19 fantasy points. Give it to me.
Yeah. But, I mean, that was just like true garbage time. They were playing 60 minutes. It was really the first quarter had a lot of drama because they were inside their own 5-yard line every play. And so there were like 8 plays where you're like, are they going to get a safety or not? It was like really exciting. And then they got blown out. But the Commanders lost to the Giants the first time, but that was Tyrod Taylor. And I think there's a big difference. I have the Dolphins and Commanders available. I haven't decided yet. I would use probably Dallas and Carolina if I had them available, but Dallas can lay an egg at any time. They're soft. They're sort of a front runner, and I like them usually against bad teams, but they're soft. The Raiders go into Miami. Miami started out well last year too and kind of fell off. And I think that September in Miami is a real thing with the humidity and the heat. And you get November, there's not a huge advantage for them at home weather-wise. There's not.
They're a good team, though.
I mean, their defense is mediocre, and A-Chain, if he's truly back, I think he's a difference maker. But they have 2 great receivers and they have speedy running backs, but that's it, right? Like, there's not really tight ends or.
How about Tua? You're not into Tua? Like, do you think Tua is the 12th best quarterback in the league?
Yeah, I like the 12th best, or something like that.
That's good.
Well, 12th best is, to me, once you're outside the top 5 or 6, you're talking about the difference between 12 and 20 is very small. And also, the one negative about Tua, and this is kind of underrated, I think, is that because he's been concussed so much, he gives away, like he slides, he goes down, he goes out of bounds. He doesn't want any part of getting a hit. And that's fine in the long term to keep him healthy. But, that's giving away yardage on a lot of plays that any regular quarterback would just put his head down at times and get the extra yards. So that's a little bit of a handicap. And then you have a quarterback that's super fragile. It makes a little bit of a difference, I think. And I don't know, their defense is mediocre. I don't think they're that good. And they always seem to lose to good teams. They do well against bad teams. I mean, you look at their point differential, they beat Denver by 50 before Denver got it together. And that's their point differential in the year, pretty much. Yeah,
I think that is a real thing that, like they're the bully team, the team that beats up on the weaker teams, and they're the good. Well, I wouldn't want to call them the good bad team. They're a bad good team, right?
Yeah, I don't see a lot of upside for them. I mean, obviously, like the speed is real, and Tyreek Hill can. I mean, they have they could light anyone up, I guess, but they haven't done it against good defense. And not like the Raiders are good, but the Raiders with Antonio Pierce are a little bit more. I don't know for sure. It's just 2 games against the Jets and Giants, but it does seem like there's a bit of a culture shift. Like it's not like like Josh McDaniel, like he just looks like a dope, and like he failed already. Like, I don't know, like when you were watching Josh McDaniels, weren't you like, this guy sucks. There's no way this guy's going to like last in this job.
Yeah, well, there's a couple. I like that you brought up Josh McDaniels because culture is a real thing, especially, it's everything almost. It's like where it starts. So he didn't make it 2 through jobs, a year and a half in each job. And remember, he took the Colts job and quit before the season started. Like, who does that? I mean, if he didn't want to do the job, that's fine. But he went back to being an offensive coordinator. So he's a guy that like wants to be there when times are good. And I don't know. It doesn't. I got that same vibe that you just talked about.
He just seems dumb. I don't know. Like there's no rhyme or reason to what they were doing. And Pierce just seems more like, I don't know how good of a coach he is. Obviously it's 2 games, but he just seems like a leader of men, at least for now. Yeah. I could be wrong about that. It's 2 games.
He's close enough to the age of the players that are playing. And he's also far enough away where he could be perceived as the adult in the room. I mean, he's been out of the league, like 8 years or something?
Yeah. And it just seems like, it's not obvious yet. And again, it may be obvious at some point that he's a clown. It's not obvious to me.
Clown would be, I don't think he's a clown. He might not be up to the level. Like he threw a red flag when you weren't allowed to throw a red flag.
Right. That stuff, I don't grade that harshly unless it's like a repeated thing. It's more like he just seems like he's serious about the job. It's like Dan Campbell said all this stuff about biting kneecaps and was like, he's a clown, but actually he was just serious about the job. And I don't know. McDaniels just didn't seem serious to me. He seemed like he was like.
I thought you meant Pierce. I'm sorry. I thought
No. I know.
Yeah.
I was talking about Pierce.
Yeah.
I was saying he doesn't strike me as a clown. He strikes me as like he's serious. But McDaniels struck me as kind of a clown. Like I was like, what's he doing? What's he even doing now? Like, why is he even? What's the purpose? I say this about the Patriots roster every week. I say, what is the purpose of this team? Like Mac Jones and a bunch of slow receivers and Ramondre and Ezekiel. Like, what are they trying to achieve? Like, why would you have that roster of like veterans, who are like bringing Juju Smith? What are you doing? What is the purpose of this? And the Raiders were sort of like that with McDaniels, and maybe, with a more serious coach, you'll see something with Jacobs and Devontae and, and Max Crosby and some of the good players they have.
Yeah, even though this predates Josh McDaniels, it was always strange that like the Raiders traded away assets for Devontae Adams. But you mentioned the Patriots, so I want to talk about them. Even going back a couple years when their free agent signings with the two tight ends, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, everyone was like, what is that? Like, those are the guys you're paying up for. And then they got nothing out of Jonnu Smith. He goes to another team. He goes to the Atlanta Falcons and then produces. So it must be them because he produced on two teams, not them. And now the news comes out this week that not only is Mac Jones not the starter, Chris, he's not even going to be the backup. They're going to allow Zappy and Will Grier to compete. They haven't announced the starter yet. Mac Jones is going to be the third quarterback if he's even active this Sunday.
Remember when the Niners, the big drama, Mac Jones or Trey Lance? Like, that's so funny. Like, it's like
neither.
Zach Wilson went ahead of them. And even Trevor Lawrence has had a terrible year. Like, that quarterback class is looking very sketchy. Remember, there was like supposed to be a lot of good.
Well, Fields.
But Fields has had a bad year too. I mean, they're all bad. Fields is probably the best of the bunch. I mean, Lawrence probably the best of the bunch, but nobody's really like crushing it in that class.
Was Purdy in that class?
He was the last pick.
He would have been
he's the best quarterback. He should have gone 1-1. He went last pick.
Right.
But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that as Jet fan, whatever, like I remember going back to that time that they said like Zach Wilson was like the locked into, there was no debate about it. I was like, how are they not even considering Justin Fields? I still believe in Justin Fields. So this is a good like transition to our next topic. He's probably on however many games are left, 8 games to prove that that he is going to have the job next year. Because right now, if the draft was today, Liss, Carolina owns the first pick, which goes to Chicago. So Chicago would have pick 1, and they have pick 5.
Right.
What does Justin Fields need to do in order for them to say, okay, we're going to build around him and keep him? Or is it just easier to reset the quarterback clock on a new contract?
I mean, in a way, I would almost like see what you can get for that number 1 pick, because sometimes you get like, if it's like a generational, right, 3 1s, and Fields is pretty good, I think too. I mean, he hasn't had a good career yet. He's just shown signs. He's just shown like eye test signs. But I'll say like Chicago this may just be coincidence, but not coincidence, but it just may be an anomaly. But there's never been a good quarterback in Chicago, like at least since the 50s. Like Jim McMahon and Jay Cutler are their 2 best quarterbacks, right? And Jim McMahon didn't do anything. He just had a defense and Walter Payton. And like it's just the weather and the environment there. I just think it's very hard to play quarterback there. Now you look at Green Bay, and they've had Favre and, even Bart Starr, Favre, and obviously Rodgers and, Jordan Love doesn't seem like.
Remember the Magic Man?
Yeah, Don Mikowski, Lynn Dickey. They had a bunch of good, they had guys who had good years. But for whatever reason, Chicago just seems like this like horrible place to play quarterback. And you wonder, like, if you spend that pick on a quarterback, if he's going to just be up against that, if that's, maybe it's just, again, just a 50-year, 60-year, 70-year anomaly. But it also may be this just a hard place with the weather and the wind. And I know the Windy City is called that because of political corruption, but it is also windy and nasty out there. And like, what if they got like elite, there's a way to build where you don't like say, oh, I'm going to get Zach Wilson with the number 2 pick, or even Trevor Lawrence and mortgage my future for Bryce Young. If you get CJ Stroud, it's cool. You're good. But where you get, generation, you get like, no, I don't know if it's generational, but like the top left tackle and the top edge rusher and the top wide receiver and the top, defensive tackle. And you've got 3, studs in there. And then Fields, who's like a scrambler and gritty. And then you just get a running back and you just become this like dominant, like offensive, defensive line dominant team with a mobile quarterback who's competent enough. Like, I don't think you always just, sometimes there's the generational guy QB, and I don't know anything about college, that you just got to take. But barring that, you end up with Zach Wilson Zach Wilson, Rodgers gets hurt. They knew Wilson was a bust, but they should have traded for Josh Dobbs or someone like that.
Come on. That's so, yeah.
Right?
Don't get me started.
Right. Okay. But the thing is, because Zach Wilson was the number 2 pick, they're like, okay, it's really unlucky that Rodgers got hurt. And we did abandon Wilson for Rodgers, but we still got to give the kid a shot because of what we have invested in him. And now they've destroyed their season. Right. And that is the price you pay for one of those picks. It's very hard to take a guy number 1 or number 2 or number 3, and then without having a long trial, because remember, Wilson was hurt a couple times, totally abandon that. And so usually there's upside, but there's franchise killing downside to missing on the top QB too.
Yeah, but look what San Francisco did, right? They were like right away, nope, it's Jimmy Garoppolo is going to start over Trey Lance. Nope, Brock Purdy's going to start over him. Like there was never a question for them once they saw it, right? So good franchises will abandon, will acknowledge a sunk cost. So, but you're making a point though but
it's hard because there's development time, right? So like you don't know for sure if it's a sunk cost. I guess they must have seen horrible stuff out of Trey Lance in practice because they were like, okay, we know we're using Purdy and good stuff out of Purdy, and they traded Lance for like very little, but the problem is you don't know until you put these guys in. They didn't know, Bryce Young versus CJ Stroud. People are like, Bryce Young is kind of undersized, but we'll see. If you knew now, I mean, Bryce Young would be in like the 3rd round and CJ Stroud would be like trade every pick you have for the next 5 years to get this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's makes you wonder, like these professional scouts, evaluators, what didn't they see that they didn't like about CJ Stroud? Because what he did, if you look back at like any of the college stuff, it looks very similar to what he's doing now. It just translated well. I mean, for a discussion for another day.
Well, I'll just say I made a bunch of comps for QBs in my write-up, and I gave Stroud Joe Montana. So I think I made a comp with Josh Allen, John Elway. I think if Elway had been in the NFC, he wouldn't have made all the Super Bowls. They only won Super Bowls after he's a caretaker. He was like this dynamic, extreme athlete, made all these great plays, but I don't think he was like as polished as the Montanas and the, Peyton Mannings and the guys that sometimes he's classified with. And I have Justin Herbert's like Marino with that fast release. And Mahomes is like peak Rodgers, but like if he sustained the peak every single year. And so the one I have for Stroud, I was just like, this is like Joe Montana. Like the guy's under pressure. He's moving in the pocket. He's not doing a lot of like rushing, but he scrambles well in the pocket. And all of a sudden the ball finds some open guy perfectly placed on time. And you're like, it's 3rd and 14. I got the Bengals in fucking Survivor. Like, what are you doing? Stop doing this. But Montana was the same way. He'd be like under pressure, finding Dwight Clark on that play. It was like, he would find the guy on the right timing, the right placement. And it wasn't like he had a cannon. It wasn't like he was mobile, but he wasn't fast. He just had the feel. And that's the guy. That's the style that I feel like I'm seeing when I watch him play.
Yeah. Yeah. You want the guy that, who you want in the proverbial foxhole next to you when the bullets start flying, right? The
so
ice
calm.
cold.
Yeah. So calm. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what Brady had to obviously an extreme. This week, Deshaun Watson out for the season. Man, that is, if you're in Superflex leagues, like I play in a lot of these dynasty Superflex leagues where this is just like almost a season ender. It's been terrible. I still think, and then, we'll talk about it from a this year perspective, but I still think like if you're in a keeper format, long-term, like Deshaun Watson is buyable. Like if you're one of the teams and you're kind of out of it, if you see a team that was contending and had Deshaun Watson, offer like Matt Stafford, Geno Smith for him, and then just wait till next year. I still think there's upside with Deshaun Watson, but Cleveland Browns with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the rookie, PJ Walker is the backup. Why do you think they decided to go back to DTR this week over Walker when he had a disastrous first outing? And what do you see can the Cleveland Browns still make the playoffs this year?
They can. I don't think they will. And I mean, losing Nick Chubb too, right? Like, so they could have like just been a ground and pound, but they lost their elite running back. And they're switching probably because they know they have no upside with Walker, right?
Right.
If DTR gets it and gets in a rhythm, like maybe he's good, right? Like we don't really know. He had one bad outing. So I actually respect that. I think there's more downside to doing this, but if the goal is to win a Super Bowl, not like sneak into the playoffs as the 7th seed and lose in the first round, I think this is the move.
Yeah. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he had a great preseason. I mean, so did Kenny Pickett. Preseason, I guess, means something, doesn't mean anything. You'd rather have seen it than not. A 5th-round pick, mobile quarterback. I totally agree here. We've getting a lot of questions about how to view the pass catchers, Cooper, Njoku, Elijah Moore. I think that, Cooper, I think you would agree, he's playable no matter what. He actually played pretty well with some of the backup quarterbacks. The other guys, I mean, hopefully you have better options, but in some leagues you have to play them.
Yeah, you expect Cooper to get his 7, 8, 9 targets, and that's like, in DFS. I hated this about DFS, but like all the sharps would be like, oh no, I'm taking Hopkins every week. He gets 10 targets. Like, it doesn't matter that he's playing against a tough defense or he's slow or whatever. He just gets the targets. And Cooper's kind of like that, right? He gets the targets. He's the number one, clearly number one. And so you probably use him, but I hate that. Like, I like to find the dynamic upside, exciting player. But Cooper's the guy.
All right. Dallas Cowboys. That's what everybody's talking about this week. I was dying to hear your take on this. Kind of started slow. You already referenced them as a team that's up and down. These last couple of weeks, man, Dak has been on a heater. CeeDee Lamb, it looks like the best receiver in the league over the last couple of weeks. I'm curious, is Dak is still like 35-1 MVP? Is that a bet that you would think about making? I was thinking about putting that down this week.
I mean, I won't deter you 35-1. That's fine. I have Dak and CD in my prime time, and I was bitching early on, like, why can't CD get targets like Devontae Adams is getting? In week 3 when Devontae Adams had 20 targets, CD had like 7 targets. They kept getting these games. Either they'd lose, be bad, or they'd crush the Giants and get 2 defensive touchdowns, and they wouldn't need to throw. But now I'm happy I have CD Lamb. It's Barkley who's been and Chris Godwin who suck. But now I'm creeping into outer contention. I need another couple big weeks. I just think Dak is a stat patter. He loves to rack up the stats against bad teams, and they'll keep throwing, which is great for fantasy. But real life, I think he's fine. I think he's like Tua, level, like top 10, 12. But there's no playoff success. He doesn't usually beat good teams. Against the Niners, he played okay, but it's still not. Actually, did they not? I can't remember if he played okay. He's on a heater. I can't remember if the Niners game was a crush. I think they got crushed.
What week was that?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
But anyway, but that's, they tend to fade against those teams. So I'm bearish on Dallas. I think McCarthy's a bad coach. And I just don't really see them. I don't see him as MVP, but I could be wrong. And 35-1 is, 35-1 means, you're almost certainly going to be wrong. But if it's only 5%, which is 19-1, then you take the 35-1, so it's hard to get the, nuance
and part of that, playing that MVP market, you can't just like pick one guy. You have to constantly take the guy that falls to 30-1. Like when Joe Burrow was down, you got him at 60-1. That was great. Right. And now you build like a portfolio of MVPs so you could be profitable at the end. I think that's, you don't just pick one guy and then, hey,
I picked Danny Dimes before the season, and you can sell your bets. So I've been selling some really shitty bets, like Saquon to lead in touchdowns. I sold that. It was like 50. I sold it for like $3. I'm like, hey, it's $3. Like, he's not going to lead. He's got 1 rushing touchdown. Mostert has 11. Now, Mostert may not get another one this year, but Saquon's not getting to 11. And even if he does, someone else will have 15 or 14. So I sold that for a couple of bucks, right? I watch him win it now, and I'll lose, be out of 2,000. But it's so funny. Like, I can't sell the Danny Dimes MVP bet. I couldn't even sell it before he got hurt. I was trying to sell that one.
I mean, you probably have to give someone $1 to take it,
Yeah, exactly. But but you can sell it back. I like that you can sell it. Now it's a shitty price usually, but some of them I sold, I was like, oh, this is just not happening. I'll sell this and get $10 back. And I did, and I'm like, okay, that's $10.
Sell to who? Like a cash out option, you mean?
Yeah, it's a cash out option, and it's, I'm getting like, 10 cents on the dollar, but hey, it's 10 cents instead of 0 cents. So I'm going to take it. It's funny.
Right. We were talking about the Cowboys. Tony Pollard, man, this is just, he's the biggest, everyone talks about like round 2. Oh, it's a bunch of busts. Tony Pollard is the biggest bust so far in fantasy football in the first 2 rounds, because there was even chatter of people wanting to push him up in the first round. Remember, he was injured last year. Do you think that this is like a lingering injury? Do you think that just like now that he's taken over the lead role, this was critics of his said he wouldn't be good in this role? What is going on? Or is it kind of fluky for Tony Pollard? The trade deadline's coming up in most fantasy leagues. Trade for, leave him alone, trade him away. What
just depends what your situation is, right? Like if you're 4-5 or whatever, 5-6, whatever, 5-5, you might trade for him, hoping that he get some opportunities. But, he did get hurt last year, and I heard some people talking about that he's not fully recovered from the injury, but it doesn't really make sense to me because Dallas would know better than anybody if he was hurt, and they featured him like he was healthy, right? They've given him carries. It's not like he's been, I don't even think he's on the injury report that much. Like, I don't really think it's an injury. And then, because you could always say, oh, he had an injury 2 years ago, it's still lingering. You could always like make that the thing, but who knows? And it wasn't like he tore an ACL or anything like that. So I really don't know. I was out on him. I just thought he's kind of small for the role. And a lot of those like part-time guys, when they go full-time, it's not the same. And, and that seems to be the most likely explanation. Maybe he lost a little step. I mean, it's just playing NFL every year. No player is the same year after year. Tony Pollard in 2022 is not the same Tony Pollard in 2023. You never step in the same river twice. It's the same. Everybody's aging, and it's not always like, just this incremental. Sometimes, okay, you just are not quite as quick as you were when you were younger after getting tackled 180 times in your partial usage year. You don't really know. And getting a full-time load is very different than getting a part-time load against tired defenses. So, yes. I made a lot of stupid calls this year, but that was not one of them.
Good. And also, you and I have talked about Rico Dowdle a couple times. He looks like a real player. I would expect him to basically his role to keep growing as it gets colder out, as the games become more important. He looks like he could be trusted in this offense as well. So I think Pollard, even his role might start to shrink, but that might be good for his fantasy output is the great irony of all this.
Yeah, they can make Dowdle into Zeke and Pollard into Pollard. It might make more sense. But the other thing is, like, you got to get the Dowdles and the clear number twos in as many teams as you can, because it's one injury away from that guy being, remember CJ Anderson that year in the playoffs, or Arian Foster, or whoever it was that just went bananas for the 3 playoff weeks. Like, you got to get that guy. And it's literally in week 12, week 13, somebody tears an ACL. It happens all the time, or even just strains a hamstring badly. You then have the league winner that doesn't even exist now. He's not even on a roster because he's not worth anything. He's not getting opportunities. You've got to have those guys scattered throughout all your rosters heading into this period, because it's one snap can change everything.
Yeah, the most notorious guy to ever do this was Tim Hightower, I think, right? Do you remember him?
I remember Tim Hightower, but I remember that he had 3 monster games.
3 or 4. They were 20-plus point minimums. One of them might have been 28, like a 3-touchdown game. And, it was like his 3rd team. And he was kind of like a scrub on all of them. And then he was the NFFC. Like, all of the NFFC big prizes had Tim Hightower on their team. Yeah. So, and I like that you brought up CJ Anderson. Who was the quarterback that did it?
It was Drew Bennett and Billy Volek. It was Volek. Yeah.
Volek, right.
Dude, yeah. I told this story 100 times, but I was playing Schuler, one of my rivals, right, in the stake league. And I was up 42 or something on Monday night. And I started trash talking him because he only had Drew Bennett going. And I was like, I just started trash talking. I mean, I just wasn't, it was a non-PPR. It was 42 points, non-PPR. Okay. This is Drew Bennett, right? and I'm trash talking him how I just dominated him in the league. And, this is like 2005 or something like that. We're in the office. And of course, I'm going to give it to him. And then, I start watching the game, and Drew Bennett has like almost 200 yards and 3 touchdowns in the first half or something crazy like that. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like this is like the most ridiculous. I just trash talked it. And he ended up getting his hands on a ball in the end zone, like on a fade that like was broken up. And that would have won it for Schuler. And I won by like a couple of points. I mean, it was like a miracle that I won it, but it was just, that was one of the most insane things I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, that's the best way to win fantasy, right? Like on a kicker thing or a fluky fractional thing. Although as painful as it is to lose your matchup when you check it by like a fraction of a point, it just feels that good to win it by a fraction of a point, or a crazy 42 non-PPR performance by Drew Bennett. It's not even like it was a Randy Moss or a star at the time.
No, I mean, it was absurd. I mean, I was almost airplane testing it, and I almost crashed, basically.
Yeah. That's a good point. That would have been airplane test. Right?
I mean, it wasn't. That's what that's the reference. It's like, look, he can get 4 touchdowns and 300 yards. Like, that's the max, and he can
get on that airplane if you need
2,304. 2,305 is about the ceiling for a receiver, right? 20 plus 30 plus 30, right? So like the most they can get is 80, right? So if you're up 100 against a receiver, I think you get on the airplane. But if you're up 70, I mean, it can happen.
Yeah. I know you've made your opinion known about the medical system, but I'll tell you right now, whoever Kyler Murray's surgeon is, Chris Liss, I want him if I ever get hurt. He looks like he hasn't lost a step. The guy tore his ACL less than a year ago. He looks spry running around. Is there some actual upside now with the Cardinals?
I don't know with the Cardinals, but I went all in on him in the stake league because it's a running. I told you that a couple weeks ago. I started Goff last week. This week it's tough because they both, you have Goff going with a bad defense going against the Bears, and that could be a high scoring game.
Running though, it could be a running game.
Well, it could be, but it could be a shootout, in a dome. But then you've got Kyler against CJ Stroud, which could also be a high scoring game. And so who would you pick? Now, remember, it's a running-friendly setup.
Kyler Murray. This is not like a question for me because if Kyler has a bad game, he's going to get you 16 to 18 points.
Yeah, but Goff at home, there's like a home road split to Goff too in that dome, and the Bears defense isn't that good. And Fields the Lions defense have been terrible, and Fields may turn this into a 41, like the Chargers game.
Now, Chicago just signed Montez Sweat. They got a new pass rusher, so they're not as bad as they once were. Now, again, I'm not saying I have the right answer. Obviously, I don't. You're asking me what I would do if it was my team. This would not be a decision for me. And again,
especially it's a point every 25 passing yards.
Yes.
And 4 points per passing touchdown. So it hurts Goff and helps Murray.
This would not be a decision that I would be. But again, I get a lot of these wrong.
If I start Murray and this is wrong, you are in big trouble, man.
At least you could blame me. But yeah, that's what I'm saying is that I just think when you look at the floor and the upside of both of these and you put them on a graph, you would just like, oh, I want this guy, the guy who's got the higher floor and the higher upside.
Yeah, but it's also his second game back. He might have had that. Have you ever played? I've not played basketball for a couple of years. I get on the court, I'm draining everything. I'm like, oh, I'm good. Second game I play, like the next week I would come back and I would be like clanging everything. I'd be like, wait, I'm not good. I forgot that I wasn't good. Now I remember. He might be like, I feel amazing. I'm back out on the field, and then it's like, oh wait, this is the Cardinals offense. It's had issues, for years.
Well, it's not just okay. So if it was just that, it's fine. But a lot of things came together for the Cardinals at once. First of all, I think I like their coach. Gannon, I think the team is held together. They knew enough to start Dobbs. They knew enough to trade him.
Right.
Like they have it down versus that old regime. Then I don't know if you watched the Cardinals. Like even though James Conner didn't produce for fantasy, he looks like a professional real running back. So now they have an actual real running back again in their backfield. They're not like running out Amari DiMercato and Tony Jones. Like they have. Oh, okay, it's a real running game. And then Trey McBride looks like. Remember, he looks like one of the best 5 tight ends in the league right now. Yeah. So you add that. Michael Wilson seems like a player. And then Hollywood Brown, man, I mean, he's still a top 15 real NFL wide receiver, something like that. So I think all these things coming together, this is not the same Cardinals team. In the beginning of the year, if we circled Cardinals versus Houston, we'd be like, oh, man, that's a game that I don't want to see. Now we're like, oh, my God, this is the game I'm like appointment.
And Stroud will probably carve him up again. And this – yeah. But I could also see it being, I don't know, I'm very against, part of the reason I faded the Texans was Stroud had so much hype off of that amazing Tampa game, but Tampa, I was like, let's just calm it down against the Bengals, but he did it again. But my instinct is always like, okay, he's really good, but there's a correction coming a bit, and this could be that 1916 game, an ugly smash it up game. And the Lions, though, to me seem like Goff at home is like 2 TDs and 300 yards, like in the bank. And there's upside for 4 TDs, but he's never going to run, and there is, I mean, yeah, I don't know if I should make too much of that home road split though. That's also a little dangerous.
It's a thing. It's a thing. You should, because it's a long enough sample now. But here's the other thing.
You hang your hat. My whole point is you hang your hat. Oh, the home road split, and then he does nothing, and you're like, what an idiot. Who cares about the home road split?
Yeah. Now, again, no one has the answer, but you asked me what I would do. There's my answer. The Arizona's incentivized, or Kyler Murray specifically. I mean, right now they have the 4th pick. Kyler Murray doesn't want that team to have the 2nd pick, right? I mean, his replacement would be staring them right in the face, and then he's got to move his house. He's got to be on a new team, and he wants to stay there, and he wants them to get an asset. I don't know. I'm very excited about the Cardinals, as you can tell by my body language here. So
yeah,
all right. Let us know what you do. Put it out on Noster.
I always put it out on Noster. Everything's on Noster all the time. Yeah. I tweet all the time on Noster.
Yep. You can follow Chris Liss, by the way. You can go to realmansports.com. That's where all his content lives. And if you're watching this video, you should check out RotoWire Premium, the behind the paywall for free right now, everybody. Go to rotowire.com/try. Put in your email, paywall unlocks. What do you have going on over there on Real Man Sports right now? What are the and also with the Chris Liss podcast, what do you have coming this week?
Well, I just did one this week and posted it, podcast, and I didn't edit it. Usually I spend like 2 hours editing, and A, because I was fasting, but B, I was like, I'm curating too much. I threw out a couple posts this week. I hadn't posted on the chrisliss.com site or chrisliss.substack.com site in a while. And I was like, I'm being too careful and it's good to have standards, but it's also good to just start the conversation, make your point, make an argument. It doesn't have to be perfect. You could refine it later. You could say, yeah, when I said that, then I wasn't thinking through a couple things. Here's the updated version. Sometimes I think you got to put stuff out and let it, and not be so perfectionist about it. So that, or maybe I'm just lazy. I don't know. And so I just released this podcast as an experiment. No edit. Like I don't edit this one, right? I just posted. I mentioned that there. I was like, because that's more controversial stuff. I want to make sure I'm saying everything that I could defend, and I'm happy to defend.
Right. But, like if you say the wrong sports take, like who gives a crap, right?
Right. So yeah, exactly. There's no real high stakes thing going here. But there I would, but then I was like, you know what? I know what I'm saying, and I'm just putting it out. So I just threw it up there. Give me feedback. Tell me what people think, of the unedited version. It's not the ums and the ahs and the knows are all in there, which I usually take out. But fuck it. It's just, it's how I talk. So
I have an idea for you, by the way, with the ums and ahs. So I will, again, I am always trying to push technology on you. There is a awesome AI tool. It's called Descript. And you throw your podcast in there and it clips all the ums and ahs out for you.
But does it do it smoothly? Like when I edit manually, it's like really like you don't know that I edited.
So I'll put it this way. I've heard your edits and your edits are fine.
Right.
These are actually going to be smoother than your edits.
Okay.
Yeah. Your edits are fine, but there's hard clips in your edits. Like I'm an audiophile, so I hear everything.
Yeah.
So
but I take it out so that like it flow, like there's not like a weird rhythm to it, and stuff like that.
So here you go. So this is what I always say. AI is not going to replace, like, let's say your job, you worked for the Chris Liss Corporation and your job was to edit the podcast. It's not going to replace you. It's not a finished product. You throw it through Descript and 88% of the work is done. You still have to put it in your thing.
Right. See, that's the problem. I don't want to even listen to it again, honestly. I realize I'm not painstakingly doing it, but it's even the listening. I just want to say what's on my mind, throw it out there, and then go to next week. Because you know what? It's like if somebody said, "Oh, I didn't agree with this," I'm happy to. I would love discussion and whatever. But like, it's like it's just too self-involved. I just want to I said it. It's what I meant at the time, and I believe it. And I may change my mind later, but I don't want to So if I have to edit it anyway, it's not.
No. If you wanted perfection, you could. So if you're going to put a product out unedited, you might as well throw it through this Descript AI thing, and then
I see, and not even check it.
Yeah, because
that would worry me. That would worry me because I don't want to check it. If I know that I recorded it, I know what I said. You run it through the AI, and who the hell knows what's coming out?
It's only clipping that's called filler words. And what happens is in this particular tool, you throw it through, and it says, let's say an hour podcast, 19 filler words detected, and it'll show you the words. Right. And it'll say, click here to delete filler words.
You hear about that guy that got killed in the meat processing plant that thought he was like a potato or something, picked him up and squashed him? This is what I'm saying, this automated shit. Oh, the self-driving cars. Everyone's like, oh, self-driving cars, and that it goes 100,000 miles without a crash. Oh, that's better than the average human. It's going really well. Oh yeah, wait till I have 100 million cars simultaneously going together. Let's see how that scales. I'm not against technology. I love technology. I just feel like, when you have errors of technology, they're big errors, right? When you have errors manually, like you hear a little clip, like when I make an error, you hear a little hard cut a little bit, but it's no big deal. When technology makes an error, it'll be like, oh, you spliced two things together, didn't make sense. Or you made me sound like a psycho because you took out the context,
right.
You took out the context of what I was saying. Like everything's fallible, everything's fallible. It's just that AI will make fewer mistakes, but when it makes a mistake, it's not, you don't have that human curation to be like, oh, I just have a little click there, from a hard cut.
This again, I'm not going to, I'm not a salesperson for Descript, but it, most of these, even like Premiere Pro, you know what that is? It's an editing software, like Adobe suites of tools. Yeah. Like even when I run my, our transcripts, our podcasts through that, it cuts out all the filler words. And I just think that like this is not like editing your podcast, but I understand what you're saying. It's the automatic car that steps on the gas. So
just
fine.
one in 1,000, like there's skid marks when the human crashes usually, right? Unless he's blacked out drunk. But when the AI car crashes, that thing's got that there's no skid marks, so
it basically you'll tell the world on your podcast that you're really a trans man.
It will. And you know what? That would be the least of my worries. Yeah. So I'd probably earn some new fans.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A new community. All right. Well, so who you take, by the way, we started with Survivor.
I'm probably taking it's Miami or Washington, and I'm probably taking Miami, but I said it was a coin flip in my column, and I gotta just meditate on it. The idea is like, oh, I want the answer. Just tell us who to take. But it's like, first off, fuck you. You're on the hook, not me, for your pick. Okay. Secondly, I don't have the answer. So I could say a word, I could say a name, and you could feel better, and I could resolve your doubt, and you can go happy for your week knowing you got a pick that you're satisfied with, but then they lose, and how happy you are with that. So you got to just pick the one that feels right, and you got to figure out why it is that feels right. You don't have to get into reasons like, oh, because the home road split and blah, blah. You don't have to get into that. That's all just not nonsense anyway. I wrote about this last week. You just got to know which one. You got to use your judgment. These are close. Look at the spread. Miami's like a couple points higher, but if you do percentages, one's like probably 84, one's like 82. It's like you got to pick the one you feel is better. But like the market is saying these are pretty damn close. Personally, I'm not decided. I think it's tight. There's no real pot odds. I mean, the 39% is a little bit, but
pot odds are over at this point, unless it's
it's also noisy. Like the data at this point too. So yeah, you got to just pick a winner right now.
All right. Our last topic for today. This is the one that I don't know. I get crazy because you mentioned like, why didn't the Jets trade for Josh Dobbs? All right. Josh Dobbs is probably, when you talk about the 5 best storylines of this season, this is one of them, right? I mean, not only does last year he get thrown into the Tennessee Titans playoff game, doesn't fall on his face. Arizona Cardinals gets traded to them a day before the season, makes them at least competitive. And then trade deadline, Minnesota Vikings, everyone thinks they're dead. They win a couple in a row. I'm going to give you a hypothetical here. If Josh Dobbs leads them to the playoffs and the schedule's pretty friendly, let's say they win a playoff game, what do you do next year? Do you wait? You sign Kirk Cousins to a $30 million deal with an Achilles, or do you just say, hey, Josh Dobbs, let's give him the $18 million contract. This is our quarterback. Why can't he be the next Dak Prescott? I mean, these guys do emerge. Russell Wilson in his peak was not a first round pick by any means. So what do you think the Vikings should do in that hypothetical?
I mean, there's some information I don't have, like how the receivers feel, the whole thing. I know Justin Jefferson said he wouldn't sign unless they sign Cousins.
That things change quick, though.
I'm not saying he still said, but I'm saying we don't know what they think, right? So like that's going to be what is it? How much is smoke and mirrors? How much is sustainable? But if he does prove beyond any doubt by winning a playoff game that it's sustainable, you probably let Cousins go. I mean, you also could like sign him and then but you can't sign and trade because they'll have like a no trade in there or something.
He's a complete free agent. There's they can't tag him.
Okay, they can't. So probably just let him go. I mean, let someone else pay for him. I mean, Dobbs, how old is Dobbs, by the way?
I think he's like 28. Let me see.
He's like 5 years younger or 6 years younger than Cousins, so I mean, it's kind of a no brainer, right? And then invest.
He'll be 29 in January.
Yeah, he's got, I mean, if he is the real thing, he's got 5, 6, 7 good years left. And, it is harder when you're a running quarterback to sustain the running as you get into your 30s. But
it's a 2-year thing, though. Like when you sign a quarterback, like look at even the Daniel Jones deal. It says 4-year deal, but it's a 2-year deal. They're wedded to him. They're wedded to him. So other than the elite guys who get 3 to 5
Cousins
years,
must be like 34, 35. He was drafted
35 going on 36.
Right. So like Cousins probably has only 1 or 2 good years left anyway. So
and next year is like a half a year because he had an Achilles injury.
Yeah. I would let him go. If he can't start for week 1, then definitely it's a no-brainer.
Yep. Cousins 35 will be 36 in August when the season starts. So again, and with the Achilles. So he'll be 36 recovering from an Achilles.
Wait, that 2012 class is hilarious because that was RG3 and Andrew Luck who were both gone. And then Tannehill is like hanging by a thread. He was the 8th pick. And then Russell Wilson and Cousins are the 2 guys that are still around. The mid-round picks.
All right. Very good. Very good. All right, Chris Liss. I want everyone to go over and follow Chris Liss's content over at realmansports.com, the Chris Liss podcast, as we just talked about. And like I said, check out RotoWire's paywall. If you haven't done it so far this season, there's a ton of every fantasy sport up there. There's basketball, football, golf. I mean, it's check it out for free, everybody. Just go over to rotowire.com/try, peek it out for 2 days. And if you don't like it, it just lapses. There's nothing to, there's no credit card to cancel. I always think that was the best pitch of the free trial. All right, Chris
I used
Liss.
to pitch that all the time. I'd say, dude, that was the best way to sell it to someone like me. I want to say one other thing.
Yeah.
Sasha and I are in first place in our hoops league, but we have Curry who's hurt. So we're a little nervous.
Oh, the Draymond thing. I want to ask you about that.
Oh, real man chokes someone out in the basketball game every time. Why not? Okay. Of course.
5-game suspension. I mean, that is light for that, right? Like
he wasn't going to kill him. I mean, he didn't lose consciousness. I mean, it was just like, it's all theater. It's all professional wrestling in the NBA. They're not really. The only time was when Shaq threw a serious punch at Brad Miller. I don't know if you saw Shaq wind up. And I mean, Shaq was like 7'1", 325 at that time. I mean, you kill somebody. Remember Kermit Washington hit Rudy Tomjanovich and crashed his whole face in the 70s? A punch is serious. That little choke, that's just some some professional wrestling shit.
Yeah, well, also Draymond takes MMA lessons, so he knows how to properly administer these chokes also, and when to let go. So Draymond's always been one of my favorite players in the NBA, like from the time he came out, and and I wanted him to go to the Knicks, the whole thing. It's like,
I love Draymond, but I mean, I think he's kind of acting. He's always bullied. I saw a video series of Rudy Gobert. He's always bullying Gobert. He doesn't like him. They don't like each other.
Good.
So he said Gobert's soft.
Frenchman. Yeah,
he's French. He's like those French, and then Charles Barkley was like, "Go easy, Draymond," in this one interview, and Draymond was like saying he's soft, and Charles was like, "Yeah, there's no mean streets in Paris. I think there are now, but they were making fun of Gobert."
Draymond is like a more skilled Bill Laimbeer in the sense where he's the guy you want on your team and you love him, or you hate him when he's not on your team.
Yeah, you want someone who's rough, right? I mean, basketball is a physical sport, but like, I hated that guy who would like throw his elbows, like, when you're playing you like kind of give him more space, and it's kind of bullshit. Like you want to just punch that guy. Yeah. But like, if he's just a psycho and he's like that, like everybody kind of gives him more space to get the rebound. It's,
it's funny. That's, he's brought back some funny memories. Yeah. All right, Chris Liss. We'll be back next Thursday. I'll have to think about retitling this thing, but although each week we still,
Epstein client list. That's what we'll call it.
Epstein client list is the name.
I'll have it ready. I'll have it ready next week.
Right. Yeah. The FBI will show up at my
I hope
house.
You're not on it. If you're on it, then we got to go public.
Yeah. I'm not wealthy enough to be on that list. All right, everybody. Thanks for supporting the podcast and the video. We'll see you next Thursday at 9:30 a.m. We'll be back with Chris Liss and another RotoWire Fantasy Football podcast collaboration with